Jimmy. Jimmy was about 13 years old. He lived in a tenement house on a very narrow and dusty street, rarely traveled by any but delivery wagons, butcher carts, and such like. And the front door view was of other people's back premises. His parents were poor. His father worked away from home months at a time, coming home for the holidays, 4th of July and Christmas. And of all the year, these were the best and happiest days for Jimmy. For then his father gave his only boy a little spending money, and once a suit of ready-made clothing with 25 cents in the right-hand pants pocket. His mother, too, went out by the day, and though I used to think she really loved Jimmy best of all, because he was a boy, still she always provided for his sisters first, because persons notice little girls' clothing, and they had to look neat at school. By the time she had attended to their wants, and it came Jimmy's turn, generally the money was all gone, or the rent was just due, or her husband's remittance had failed to arrive on time, and a bill of credit was accumulating. All these, and perhaps other conditions, so intervened between her intentions and her actual performance of them, that it became quite the common thing for Jimmy to be the neglected and poorest-dressed member of the family. Boys don't mind about their looks as girls do. Nobody notices how boys look. They're always down on their knees playing marbles, and good clothes would soon look just as bad, is the style in which neglect of boys' appearance and comfort is often excused. Now, Jimmy did love to see his little sisters look neat and pretty on their way to school, and did not envy them a ruffle on their aprons, or even buttoned shoes, when lace shoes would have done just as well and would have been a saving towards his wardrobe. And when his mother bought some little extra for herself, so as to look nice when she went to work for fine persons, Jimmy thought she looked prettier than ever. But when he started downtown to hunt a day's work or some errand to do, and instinctively looked at his limp felt hat, shabby overalls, and grimy hands, then at his bare toes, I know Jimmy had a very downcast and abstracted air, and a general lack of confidence in anyone wanting to give him anything to do. But happily, boys are liable to sudden changes of feeling, and the first, "Hello, Jim," that greeted him had power to rout instantly every dark thought, and set him on good terms with all the world again, and the 2 or 3 would set off together in quest of something to do. Boys who were apprenticed to trades ventured generous and impossible suggestions to do as they were doing, but the superintendents always had boys enough at present, which present time seemed to be all the year round. These more fortunate boys all liked Jimmy, and when coasting was in season, he was always among them, apparently as happy as any. They divided their treats of candy, etc., with him, and played marbles or kite as enjoyably with him as with any other boy. On the occasion of a circus, I am happy to say that Jimmy was always seen going in with the crowd of his friends, and I have even known several of them to accompany him after their work hours to the rear of some store, by permission, in quest of discarded boxes for kindling wood. These expeditions were made with great zeal, and intense enthusiasm prevailed when the search resulted in such discoveries as swept-out sticks of gum, charm buttons, cracked pocket mirrors, old lead pencils, etc., the spoils being always honorably divided, though often into painfully small portions. Sometimes the boxes, always acknowledged to be Jimmy's property, would be pronounced too good for kindling wood. An exchange for rougher material would ensue, with liberal boot thrown in, such as flipper lastic, pearl-handled knife with only 3 blades gone, the incomplete works of a nickel-cased watch, or a pocket pistol no longer dangerous. How I have listened and laughed at their bartering under the fence, and how they took satisfaction. When Jimmy's mother came home tired enough, and smiled to see the fire he had ready, and the little girls getting the table set, didn't he feel that he had done his share? Perhaps he had worked part of the day and invested in a bologna sausage, or, yielding to temptation, made a reckless expenditure in small cakes and caramels, enough for a taste all around. Or if he had been completely unfortunate all day and came home with a heavy heart. Whichever way it was, be sure his mother gave him her fondest smile and had most to say to Jimmy. Their rooms were small and uncomfortably warm in summer and very muddy about the door in winter. But the mother had a knack of making such pretty tidies for stands and shelves, and the cheap white muslin curtains, trimmed with her own crochet lace, draped the windows so prettily, and the cook stove shone so brightly that the plain rooms looked quite cheerful. In the evenings, as the mother sewed or crocheted, she told them stories of the farm their father once owned, of the cow she milked, the plenty of sweet milk, good butter, and green corn, roasting ears. Jimmy listened, and a longing grew in his heart to go into the country and live just such a life. He made many resolves to go and work with his father as soon as his mother would consent, and by his help, they would all the sooner own a piece of land, a cow and calf he would train the calf himself, and a horse. How his heart swelled at the very hope. Then thought he, how happy he would be to have all the boys come out to their place and see his pets and eat melons, and how he would show them where to find birds' nests, squirrels, and rabbits, and what rambles they would all take under his leadership. This all seemed only a matter of time to Jimmy, and he forgot many of his present troubles in happy daydreams. If Jimmy sometimes said, "Maybe our folks will move out onto a farm sometime," the boys had no doubt of it and cheerfully hoped it might happen soon, so they would all have somewhere to go and visit. The discussion of the matter seldom went further, for wasn't Jimmy's father a miner? And how was anybody to know but that he was economically and steadily putting aside enough to sometime very soon buy a modest little farm with complete outfit? The hard winter had gone, springtime and sore throats were disappearing, and on sunny days, shoes and stockings could be dispensed with. The sidewalks were in good condition for marble playing, and the wind on the hill was not too rough for kite flying altogether. Life was easing a little for Jimmy. He was having less anxiety about kindling wood, and could devote some time to gathering watercress and dandelions, which brought in the nickels if boys would just go around to folks' houses with their baskets. A rather novel feature of this kind of traffic was that several boys went together to each house, and by the abundance thus exhibited seemed to depress trade rather than the reverse. And sometimes the housekeeper was in perplexity which party to patronize out of delicate regard for individual feelings. When I once ventured to suggest a different arrangement to the boys, I learned that this combination of interests was necessary to engender sufficient confidence to carry on the business, and that they divided turns in selling or receiving money by an arrangement equally profitable all around. Just as Jimmy was doing fairly well and beginning to see a definite prospect of a new hat and overalls, he became sick. It was not considered anything serious. At first only a sore throat, and by his mother's wish, Jimmy stayed at home all day to take care of himself and be ready for the next day's campaign. When his mother came home at night, he had a fever. The boys came around the gate and finally sent in word that they would come that way in the morning. By the time they appeared, Jimmy was helpless with a burning fever, and they went on in a lingering, unsatisfied manner for a block or two, then stopped to talk it over, arriving at an arrangement to sell 1 or 2 baskets to Jimmy's customers for him, and call and report financially. This resolve had great effect in elating their spirits and inspiring great diligence in the forenoon's work and the afternoon sales. But when they filed up the steep, narrow sidewalk and neared the house, a yellow flag, the sign of diphtheria, floated from over the door. A swift exchange of surprised looks, a brief consultation, and then one of them said, "I don't care. I'll take his money to the door anyway." The rest of the group stood with cautious prudence quite near enough to catch the infected atmosphere and watched the bearer approach the door, and putting the money into the bewildered mother's hand, then deliver a brief explanation. "I'll put it by till he can understand, and then tell him," she said. "But he's very sick, the doctor says." And the poor mother brushed her hand across her eyes and turned to answer Jimmy's faint, delirious call. Very quietly, the boys walked away and halted at the corner instead of making their usual visit to a baker's shop. Poor Jimmy. I guess, though, he'll get well. Don't you think so? Let's come up this way in the morning. I've got a pup I was going to give Jimmy, said another. I wish watermelons were ripe. I think one might do him good, added a third. And I'll tell my mother. She knows what's good for sickness jellies and things, joined in the fourth. This last suggestion seemed to afford more immediate satisfaction than the others, and they parted, each going his own way at quickened pace to tell the news at home that Jimmy Jones has got the diphtheria, the very worst kind. It's so, I've been right to the house. This communication was received with unmistakable interest and alarm in each home where it was repeated, and painful injunctions given as to the next day's appointed visit. Watching so eagerly for a return of consciousness in the sufferer's face sat the sorrowful mother. He called her. He seemed to know her all the time, and she caught the chance to try and bring back other memories. Jimmy, dear, the boys were here last night. They brought your share of money for the watercress. See, here it is. Won't you hold it in your hand? He looked at her, and she knew he thought only of her. The poor brown fingers that she had shut upon the 2 dimes and the 2 nickels opened, and the unnoticed silver rolled upon the white sheet. She picked them up again and held them so that he could see them. The boys brought you this, Jimmy. They said it was yours. Look, dear. But Jimmy only answered, Mother, take me. And her tired, loving arms that had lifted and held him night and day raised him up again so that he would cease his restless moving and moaning. The hot sun came through the white curtains. The smell of stale water and soap suds thrown out upon the little yards of the tenement houses came in through the raised windows. The flies swarmed in, too, and the air was full of kitchen odors and medicines. The low wall where hung his faded and frayed apparel faced him. The low, smoky ceiling seemed to close down upon him. Voices from all through the house reached that room, and dust rolled in from the street. And if any remembrance of earthly ills or happy plans he had told came back to him, or if a better promise, a truer and sweeter, was before his eyes that looked with so uncertain gaze in hers, she could not tell. The father sat in helpless silence, looking on the wasted form. The children tiptoed carefully about with whispers and tearful eyes, and alive to all, caring for everything, for nothing, shuddering, with one dreadful truth before her, yet holding back the cry of anguish struggling to be free. The mother held him to her heart and watched the last look answer to her own, heard the last breath pass away forever, and Jimmy was gone. If you've enjoyed this video, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel for more.